Check the description for the following discount codes. There's a certain point in the pricing of equipment we buy in sim racing that kind of takes it from being a serious piece of sim racing equipment to being a toy. And at that point, things start to feel like a toy. They're plasticky, they feel cheap, the build quality isn't great, and often the functionality is not great either. Now what we've got here, having already tested this out, is something that kind of blurs the barriers a little bit between sim racing equipment that you might take seriously and what you would class as a toy. This is available exclusively from Argos in the UK. It is both Xbox, PlayStation and PC compatible. It's kind of what piqued my interest really, because I've had cheap Chinese, like Amazon sellers send me stuff like this before and it's been awful. But when this one contacted me and said, you know, we're shipping or we're supplying exclusively through Argos in the UK, I was like, oh, okay, well, that's a little bit more serious than your usual, you know, make it cheap, throw it on Amazon type scenario. So I thought, all right, let's take a look. We'll just go quickly through the spec. I've mentioned the compatibility already. Clamping system, obviously, this is designed to be clamped to a desk, really, and that's how I've been testing it. It does say it's compatible with all cockpits, but the issue with that is, whilst the wheelbase can be bolted to a cockpit, the pedals that I'll show you in a minute can't. There's no fixing points for them. We have a Android and Apple app to adjust things like the force feedback and a few other settings, degrees of rotation on the wheel itself. It comes with a 6-speed shifter plus reverse, 3 pedal set, and the wheel itself 270 millimeters in diameter with 1080 degrees of rotation. Again, this is adjustable in the app. There's an LED display at the top and 18 action buttons and gear shift paddle with a magnetic encoder. Force feedback is gear driven, just like the Logitech wheelbases, and you can feel that and hear it in use. And it says a maximum torque of 3.2 Newton meters. Now I believe that is a little higher than what the Logitech one is. Isn't the Logitech one 2.5 or something along those lines? Anyway, I thought, yeah, all right, send it over. I'll have a look. And, you know, to cut a long story short, I think this would be a great, I'll give you a little close-up whilst I'm talking. I think this would be a great option for kids because it actually gives you a pretty decent experience for very little money. Ports on the back here. We have pass-through for putting Xbox or PlayStation controller into, depending what Xbox or PlayStation you have. Power input, USB-C, which goes into your device, in my case a PC, shifter input, pedal input. There's no on and off button on the underside. We've got our 4 M6 bolt holes for securing it to a cockpit should you want to, and some rubber feet as well. The wheel itself, in fact, you can, if you listen, that typical gear driven sound, just like a Logitech G series. We do have an LED strip at the top here. We have various different buttons dotted around and a D-pad. Paddles, very much cheap and plastic. Again, I don't know if I said the price, $149.99. So it is toy money, and hence it does feel, in most areas, it feels like a toy. The wheel's plasticky. These are rubber grips. There's no leather or anything on here, no metal. And the paddles, again, plasticky and cheap. But the buttons themselves actually feel quite nice. I've felt worse buttons than this and a worse D-pad on higher end wheels from other manufacturers. So quite impressed with the buttons. But the paddles, they're definitely cheapo. You've then got your desk clamp, rubber feet here and here. This bolts to the underside. In fact, I'll put a little video up now of me walking around this with it installed on my desk, so you can see what it looks like installed on your desk with the shifter beside it. The pedals on the floor. The shifter has a desk clamp built in as well. And the pedals, like I say, don't have any fixing points, so you couldn't put them on a sim rig and secure them, you could perhaps just sit them on your sim rig. But to be honest, if you've got a cockpit, if you've got a rig, you're not going to be buying something like this anyway. This is for desk use, and the pedals are designed to go on carpet, you know, it's or a normal floor. So shifter, the clamp that I mentioned and you see in that video clip a minute ago, there is a parking brake or handbrake button and a high-low gear ratio button. So truck simulations, things like that. You've then got your 6-speed gated H-pattern shifter. Now what's interesting is it's 6-speed plus 1, i.e. reverse. So where does the reverse appear from? 6th gear, if you push the shifter in before moving it across, actually registers as a 7th gear. So when I was testing this out in Dirt Rally, which I may as well put a clip up of now because I like to play rally titles, H-pattern shifting, you know, it's that kind of tactileness, you know, you're yanking on the handbrake to get round corners, you're banging through the gears. It's just how I like to play rally games, even though, you know, it isn't the fastest compared to using a sequential setup, but you know, that's my preference and I'm allowed to do it. So this is what I tested in. The shifter itself feels, I dare say, almost a little better than the Logitech one, because that's, you know, that is for the Logitech stuff. The shifter is really the biggest letdown out of the wheel, the pedals and the shifter. It feels very toy-like and very plasticky, which this does, but, and it looks very similar also, but I dare say the actual engagement feels a tiny bit nicer even than what the Logitech one does. It is very light, there's no real resistance there to speak of, but it functions. Yeah, again, if you look at the top of the knob there, which shows you your gears, you've got 6 gears plus a reverse, but there is only 6 slots in your gate there. So as I say, to press it in, go across, go into reverse. So if you were in 6th, for example, and you crashed in Dirt Rally, and you then needed to go into reverse to reverse out, I mean, it's very rare that I end up in 6th gear in Dirt Rally, but if you did, you would have to pop back to neutral first and then engage into reverse. An interesting choice, interesting way of doing it. But yeah, that's the shifter. That's the wheel. Let's have a look at the pedals now. These again, excuse me, quite obviously toy-like. These are actually metal faces, I believe. They feel it. These little, what you would call like normally rubbery grips, they're more of a plastic than a rubber if we compare them to say the Logitech ones. But there's 3 pedals. They work just fine. They all feel exactly the same from a resistance point of view. The brake isn't heavier. It doesn't sort of harden up like the Logitech one does. They're all just completely linear and can be pushed with one finger. Again, price point, it's toy money, but it actually performs and functions better, which I'll get to in a minute. So this is all plastic. We have another little heel plate that folds out to make it a bit bigger, which I did use. You'll see that in some footage that I put up of me using these pedals. In fact, I may as well put that up now if I haven't already. My heels are resting on it. They didn't move on the carpet, not at all. But that's really because you don't put much force. There's 2 things really. You don't put a lot of force on the pedals because they're very light and there's very little resistance. And secondly, they are angled in such a way that you're more pushing down towards the floor than you are pushing away from you. So it'd be very difficult for them to slide away on your carpet or your floor because of that design. So whether that was intentional or not, I'm going to say it probably is, because otherwise you'd have them just more upright. But you know, they're just very cheap, springy pedals. Again, very toy-like. What you expect for the money, but they do work just fine. And as I say, there's rubber feet on the bottom of this, but there's no captive nuts or threads to be able to bolt it to a sim rig should you want to. But again, if you can afford a sim rig, a cockpit, you probably have something other than this. Unless you picked up a cheap play seat challenge, second hand. I got mine for 60 quid, in which case you could use the strap that comes with that to secure these to the play seat challenge. That would work just fine. Now, what else did it come with? Little power supply here, 1.2 amps. I believe that's similar to what the Logitech one puts out. Sorry, no, output 2 amps, 48 watts. Tiny little thing. Comes with an appropriate, for me, UK plug. We then get a braided USB-C cable that goes from this to your PC or your console, and it does come with the bolts and the Allen key to be able to, you know, bolt it to a cockpit should you want to. Again, barring the pedals, because the pedals don't have any fixing points. What else? We get the instruction manual, which is pretty basic. It's in quite a few different languages, and it has the QR code there to link you to the app for your phone. Let's just bring that up quickly, shall we? See if the camera will focus on it. There isn't a whole lot to show you, but you can adjust the degrees of rotation. You can reverse the force feedback. Don't know why you want to do that, but you've got spring force, damping force, friction force, and inertia force, and you can reassign all the buttons as well. Well, it actually looks like it's focused surprisingly well. Well done, Sony camera. And then you've got some configuration specific to, oh right, okay, you can add a custom config for the buttons specifically. And there is a test function which allows you to test that the wheel rotation and that all the pedals are and buttons are responding as they should. So it's kind of, and the gears as well at the bottom there. It's kind of what we'd normally be able to do on our PCs, but they've done it in an app, presumably because of the console support. So that makes a reasonable amount of sense actually. So that will work fine, no issues with that. I did get a warning actually. Do I want to install unsigned apps or something or another? I forgot what the exact phrasing is for Android, or unknown sources, I think it is. Obviously I chose yes to be able to do that. So I've had a look at everything. Yeah, so the force feedback itself, let's put up a clip of me driving an ACC here now. The one you saw me earlier in Dirt Rally, the force feedback didn't work. And I've experienced this before with Dirt Rally when you're trying hardware that wasn't out at the time the game was released or last updated. Acertech wheelbases, for example. You have to go in and edit a text file within Dirt Rally and add in the Acertech base so that it supports it and sends the force feedback telemetry to it. I imagine you would have to do the same thing with this. On PC, I do not know how it works with consoles, because obviously you can't go in and edit INI files and add additional hardware. It might be that that works in a different way, in the way that the input devices speak to your Xbox or your PlayStation and then speak to the game. I don't know, but it does come with PlayStation and Xbox support, so who knows. But for me, Dirt Rally didn't work. I had a quick Google. I couldn't find any information on it because it's a relatively new wheel, I guess, and not super popular, so I just moved on. But Dirt Rally was what I used to test the shifter and the clutch in. Obviously, when you see what you see now, ACC, I'm using the plasticky paddles. And whilst they feel awful compared to what us high-end sim racers are used to, they function just fine. But more importantly, I was impressed with the force feedback. I could feel detail in the road. I could feel traction loss when I lost traction and was able to counter steer and catch slides. I could feel rumble strips as my wheels went over them. And if I contacted another vehicle, I got a little vibration through the wheel relative to the speed and force of the impact as well. Overall, I was very impressed for this $149.99 price point. And I thought to myself, if I was a kid and my parents bought me this for a birthday, for Christmas, you know, I would be over the moon with it. I'd be more than happy. You know, I just sat there smiling to myself as I was using it, thinking, wow, this isn't actually that different to a Logitech setup from the force feedback point of view. And you know, Logitech is kind of like your base entry level, what we would call a serious sim racer's wheel, you know, one that you'll actually use for properly trying to simulate racing, you know, before you step up the ranks. Obviously the pedals are better with the Logitech, and really that's what it comes down to with this here. The only thing I would change or modify would be the brake pedal, because that's it's the same as all the others, and without it hardening that, and you can't modulate properly. You could even just wedge a bloody elastomer under the back of it and it would probably do a similar thing, although actually it needs to travel. There's no pressure sensor, there's no load cell, so you'd never reach 100% braking force if you put something under there, so don't do that. On a PC you could calibrate it short and get around it, but not on console you couldn't, so that is what it is. But for the price, $149.99, the Logitech G920 or G29 is about £100 more. It's like $230 to $250 depending where you buy it from, and then the G923 is nigh on $300 last time I checked. So it's a big saving, and $149.99 I think is much more affordable as a gift of something you might buy for a kid versus $230 to £300 for the Logitech offer, and we're talking brand new prices, of course. But yeah, I actually think, you know, this, I don't know how long it would last, obviously, because it is plasticky. It does feel, you know, cheaply made, but it actually performs. The force feedback is actually pretty decent, and I was impressed and surprised, as I say. And the little shifter as well. It actually feels quite nice to use. You know, I was there playing Dirt Rally, and yes, I feel like I'm being delicate with things, the pedals especially, but thinking, you know, if I was a kid, a teenager, even an adult that's never experienced force feedback before or driven in a racing game or simulation on a controller and never used steering wheel pedals and a shifter, it would have been a decent experience for the money that they're charging. So weirdly, I would actually recommend this to anyone whose budget is no more than £150 and wants to buy something new, or if you're buying something for your kid for an occasion and you didn't want to spend Logitech money and you didn't want to go second hand, this works just fine. It's only available from Argos here in the UK, so I can't do a link in the description. I might see if I can find Amazon one for the rest of the world. I don't know if they sell on Amazon anywhere else, but I did check Amazon UK and they don't. It is only through Argos. I mean, I can put an Argos link, I suppose. Yeah, I'll put an Argos link in the description for people. Obviously, I don't have a discount code or anything like that either, as it's for a big UK retailer. But yeah, the MaxxTech Force Feedback Racing, MaxxTech Pro Force Feedback Racing Wheel Kit actually gets the thumbs up from me for the price. The force feedback was surprisingly detailed, surprisingly powerful, and I overall was just impressed and sort of couldn't believe what I was experiencing for such little money out of something that looks and feels very much like a toy. Anyway, as always, thank you very much for watching and take it easy.